The night the signal arrived began like any other quiet shift at the small research station. The air outside was cool, and the stillness of the desert made every small sound inside the building feel louder than it should. A few tired scientists were gathered around their screens, sipping warm drinks and talking softly as they kept an eye on the usual data streaming in from the sky. None of them expected anything unusual. Most nights were calm and uneventful, filled with familiar patterns and routine readings. But then, something strange appeared on one of the monitors. At first, it was only a tiny spike, barely noticeable, like a small bump in a long line of steady waves. One of the researchers leaned closer, frowning a little, wondering if the equipment was acting up again. The instruments sometimes did that, picking up signals from nearby satellites or old communication towers. But when the spike repeated, exactly the same way, a second time, the room slowly grew still. They waited, watching the screen carefully. 10 seconds later, the spike appeared again, same height, same shape, same position. Someone lowered their cup. Another person rolled their chair closer. No one spoke, but everyone could feel an invisible shift in the atmosphere, as if the air had grown thicker with curiosity. A repeating signal wasn't impossible, but it wasn't common either. And this one was too perfect to ignore. One of the scientists adjusted the filters to remove background noise. The signal stayed. Another tried isolating frequencies. The pattern remained. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't a glitch. And it didn't match any known natural source. It kept returning every 10 seconds, like a heartbeat coming from somewhere far beyond the solar system. Someone finally whispered the question. Everyone else was thinking, but afraid to say out loud, "What if this isn't from us?" No one answered. Immediately, the idea felt too big, too heavy. But the signal kept repeating, as if insisting that someone listen. Soon, the small room was buzzing with quiet excitement and nervous energy. More people were called in. Equipment was checked again and again. The signal did not disappear. It only grew clearer as they studied it. The pattern inside the spike wasn't random. It had structure, like shapes hidden within shapes, layers of meaning waiting to be uncovered. Hours passed, and the sun slowly began to rise over the desert, painting the sky in soft orange and pink. But inside the station, no one noticed the sunrise. The team was too focused on decoding what they now believed might be the first message from beyond Earth. Word spread quickly through private channels. Nearby observatories picked up the same signal. Scientists from different countries called in to confirm it. In less than a day, a quiet murmur turned into a global discussion. Everyone wanted to understand what the message was trying to say. When the first rough decoding came in, the result made people fall silent. Inside the spike was a series of mathematical shapes, simple enough to be recognized by any intelligent species, yet arranged in a way that suggested more than just communication. There were repeated frequencies that resembled emotional bursts, something close to what humans might describe as a tremble or a cry. The more they studied the message, the more it felt like a plea, a distress signal. No one expected that. Most people had imagined that if humanity ever made contact with another species, it would be a grand introduction, a proud moment filled with mystery and awe. But this wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a declaration. It was something far more fragile. It felt like someone far away was scared. Someone who didn't know what else to do. Someone reaching out, hoping someone would hear. The revelation shook the science teams around the world. It even softened the reactions of governments that normally stayed distant and cautious. For the first time in history, humans weren't wondering if aliens might invade or hide among them. They were wondering if these beings were safe, if they were alive, if they were desperate. Of course, not everyone believed it immediately. Many people questioned the possibility of a misunderstanding. Some argued it was a trick, a trap, or simply a natural phenomenon humans had never seen before. But the repeating pattern was too intentional, too deliberate. Back at the research station, the team continued working nonstop. Even though exhaustion weighed on them, none of them wanted to leave. They felt like witnesses to something extraordinary, something that would change the world forever. More parts of the message slowly began to make sense. The emotional frequencies grew stronger as they decoded them. It was as if the sender was using energy dips and rises to show fear, urgency, or maybe even sorrow. A quiet, heavy feeling settled over the team as they studied these patterns. These weren't war cries or threats. They were more like tears. People outside the scientific community began paying attention too. News reports hinted at a mysterious signal detected by multiple observatories. Online discussions exploded with theories. Some people were excited, some terrified, but almost everyone was curious. The idea that another civilization might be in trouble hit a deep, human part of the heart. Meanwhile, more signals arrived, each with slight variations. Some contained sharper emotional bursts. Others contained new shapes and sequences. The messages appeared to build on each other, like someone trying desperately to get a point across. One of the breakthroughs came when a language analysis team noticed a pattern that looked like a repeated symbol. It appeared again and again, almost like a word. After comparing data from several transmissions, they realized it was referring to something or someone. It described a species capable of harsh environments, high pressure, extreme temperatures, and intense physical challenges. A species known for surviving conditions that would destroy fragile life. And the aliens used one term for it, Deathworlders. At first, the word sounded frightening, even dramatic. But as the scientists looked deeper, they understood what it meant. The senders weren't calling humans monsters or warriors. They were simply describing beings a lot tougher than themselves. It was like a delicate creature asking help from someone who could walk through storms. Realization hit many people in a surprisingly emotional way. Humanity had always seen itself as vulnerable compared to the vast universe, yet these distant beings were looking at humans with a kind of awe. They believed humans were strong enough to survive environments they could not, strong enough to help. As the decoded pieces spread through private networks, global leaders began holding quiet meetings. Everyone understood the weight of the moment. If they responded, they were stepping into a responsibility unlike anything before. If they didn't respond, they might ignore a civilization pleading for its life. After long hours of discussion, a simple plan formed: send a cautious, neutral response. Nothing too detailed, nothing too emotional. Just a signal that said, "We hear you. We are here." The message was transmitted using a broadband pattern designed to be easy to detect. For many hours, the world waited, unsure if there would be an answer. People went about their day with a lingering sense of wonder. Even those who didn't fully believe the story found themselves checking news updates every few hours. Then, in the middle of the night, the reply came. The signal was longer, clearer, and more carefully structured. The emotional frequencies were calmer now, almost relieved. The same repeated symbol appeared, but this time it was followed by a new sequence. It translated into something simple, something almost human. To those from the harsh world, only you can survive where we cannot. The room at the research station went silent again. Not from confusion this time, but from the overwhelming feeling that humanity had just stepped into something far bigger than itself. A doorway had opened not in space, but in responsibility. The scientists didn't know what would happen next. They didn't know if the beings who sent the message were near or far, peaceful or fearful, strong or fragile. But they knew one thing with certainty. Someone out there believed humans could help, and that belief for reasons no one could fully explain, touched people in a way that felt both humbling and powerful. No one slept much that night. Messages were shared, calls were made, and data was reviewed again and again. Everyone waited for more signals. Everyone wondered what the next step would be. But most of all, everyone felt the same quiet, truth rising beneath the fear and uncertainty. Someone far away was crying out for help, and humans, regardless of their differences, were listening. The days after the first reply felt unreal, like the world was holding its breath. Even though life continued as usual, people going to work, children going to school, cities buzzing, there was a quiet change beneath everything. A soft awareness that somewhere in the universe, someone was waiting for humanity's response. And not just waiting, but depending on it. At the research station, the team barely left their desks. They slept in short shifts, ate quick meals, and kept their eyes glued to their screens as new signals arrived each day. These messages came in different lengths and strengths, but all carried the same emotional weight. The energy bursts translated into something close to fear, hope, and exhaustion. The more the team decoded, the more they understood that the senders weren't speaking to humans as equals or strangers. They were speaking with a kind of humility, almost reverence. It was clear they believed humanity was stronger, tougher, able to handle challenges they could not survive. That idea unsettled many people. Humans had spent lifetimes wondering if they were alone, fearing what advanced alien civilizations might do if they ever found Earth. But instead of mighty conquerors or cosmic giants, the first beings to reach out were fragile, frightened, and on the edge of losing everything. News of this began spreading around the world, though in quiet, cautious ways. Governments didn't want panic, and scientists wanted more time to confirm every detail. But whispers grew into online discussions, and online discussions soon turned into major headlines. People everywhere began asking the same questions. Who were these aliens? What were they running from? Why did they call humans Deathworlders, as if the word had meaning? And why did they believe only humans could survive whatever they were facing? Across different countries, leaders met in private sessions. They reviewed recordings, discussed possible dangers, and debated the moral weight of helping a species they had never seen. Some feared that responding could bring unknown risks to Earth. Others believed that ignoring a cry for help from a dying civilization would be unforgivable. Meanwhile, scientists from universities, observatories, and independent research centers worked together in a rare display of unity. They shared data without hesitation, letting cross-team specialists look at the signals from new angles. Linguists studied patterns. Mathematicians decoded sequences. Emotion researchers examined the frequency dips. Even psychologists were involved, trying to understand the emotional intention behind the transmissions. One evening, a group of communication experts working on the emotional patterns made a discovery that would change everything. They realized that the tremble-like frequency bursts weren't random. They were almost like a rhythm used to show vulnerability. Each message carried a slightly different pattern, suggesting the senders were trying to communicate not only facts, but feelings. Some bursts were sharp and quick, like a gasp of fear. Others were slow and heavy, like grief. And some signals carried a warmer tone, a steady pulse that felt like trust. This realization brought an unexpected wave of empathy among the scientists. They weren't dealing with distant, mysterious aliens anymore. They were dealing with living beings who felt deeply, who were terrified, who were reaching across the stars for someone to hear them. Every new message felt more personal. Some transmissions contained new shapes, simple triangles, lines, and spirals arranged in sequences that resembled instructions or explanations. Scientists speculated that the senders were trying to describe their environment, their technology, or maybe their problem. One sequence showed a shape that resembled a thin curve over a sphere. Another showed waves rising and falling. It took days for atmospheric researchers to understand what it meant. The aliens were showing their planet's air layer thinning over time. The next sequence showed dots disappearing one by one. At first, people thought they might represent stars, but then someone noticed that the number of dots lined up with earlier references to population counts. The dots weren't stars, they were lives, and they were vanishing. The weight of that discovery spread quickly among the research teams. People who had stayed calm through the excitement now sat quietly, staring at the screens with heavy hearts. It wasn't just a theoretical emergency. It was a real disaster happening in real time to real beings. For the first time, humanity understood that the messages weren't just cries for help. They were updates from a dying world. That knowledge accelerated everything. Governments held emergency meetings. International alliances formed special committees. Security groups prepared for possible risks, even though no threat signs appeared in any of the signals. Amid all this, some leaders expressed concern. They wondered whether humanity could truly help another world when many problems remained unsolved on Earth. Others argued that helping didn't need to be perfect, it just needed to be human. At the research station, the team focused on the most important task, sending a clear message back. But the world disagreed on how much information to share. Some wanted to stay cautious and vague. Others believed that since the senders were desperate, humanity needed to offer reassurance. After long debates, a simple response was crafted. It was direct, calm, and carried no complicated promises. We hear you. We understand. Tell us what you need. This message was sent using a gentle energy pulse pattern, imitating the emotional tones the aliens used in earlier signals. The decision to match their style was made to show empathy, not superiority. During the long wait that followed, people all over the world stayed awake far later than usual. Even though only a small team could see the incoming data in real time, millions kept refreshing news pages, watching live streams from observatories, and whispering with family members about what might happen next. In the early hours of the morning, when the sky outside was still dark and the research station was lit only by monitors, the reply came. This message was longer than any before. The emotional frequencies were calmer this time, almost relieved. The pattern of shapes was clearer, easier to read. One of the first translated lines was simple. You answered. The message went on to explain, slowly and carefully, that the aliens had been searching for help for a long time. Their world had become too fragile to support their bodies. Their atmosphere was thinning faster each passing cycle. Their last technology to protect themselves had begun to fail. They had sent distress signals in every direction, but most nearby planets were uninhabitable. Others were too dangerous, and some species they had encountered were too delicate themselves, unable to assist. But then they found Earth. They used telescopes far more sensitive than anything humans had ever imagined. They studied Earth's storms, volcanoes, deserts, oceans, and climate shifts. They watched humans survive extreme cold, intense heat, and natural disasters. They listened to radio signals, saw lights across continents, and realized humans were a species shaped by challenge. To them, humanity wasn't frightening. They were inspiring. They called humans Deathworlders because Earth was considered one of the toughest known habitable planets. A world full of unpredictable weather, strong gravity, high radiation, and conditions that should have made life rare. But instead, Earth was full of life. To the aliens, this meant humans were the ones capable of surviving environments that would destroy delicate species like them. This wasn't an insult. It was admiration. After the message finished decoding, the room at the research station went quiet again. People stared at the screen, stunned, not by fear, but by the unexpected way someone far across the universe saw. Them. Humanity had always carried doubts, conflicts, and insecurities. But in the eyes of these distant beings, humans were something strong, resilient, and extraordinary. The message ended with a final line that felt almost like a whisper. We are still here. But not for long. Please help. News of this reached global leaders faster than any message in history. Later that morning, a worldwide broadcast was prepared. It didn't reveal all details, just enough to let the public know something incredible was happening. People across the world watched with deep curiosity as a spokesperson explained that a distant civilization had sent a distress call. They confirmed that the beings were peaceful, frightened, and in urgent need of help. They explained that humanity had responded, and more information would be shared as soon as it was safe. A reaction was overwhelming. Social media flooded with messages of awe, hope, fear, and wonder. Families stayed up late, talking about what might come next. Teachers paused lessons to discuss the news. Strangers looked at each other differently, almost with a sense of shared destiny. Meanwhile, the scientific teams continued studying the signals. They discovered that some parts of the message contained something new: calculated coordinates, like a map. Not to Earth, but from the aliens' position, as if they wanted humans to understand exactly where they were. This sparked dozens of new discussions among global leaders. If the coordinates were real, humanity now knew the exact location of a dying civilization. The question was whether Earth should attempt contact beyond signals. Special committees formed to consider all possible outcomes. Some warned of risks. Others argued that helping a desperate species could define humanity's future in the universe. Throughout all this, new transmissions continued arriving, some shorter, some longer. Many filled with emotional resonance, but each one carried the same quiet plea. In the final signal of the day, the aliens sent one more line that struck every person who read it. We are afraid. But when you answered, we felt hope. And with that, the world understood something simple but profound. Someone far away believed in humanity. Before humanity fully believed in itself, the question now was not whether humans could help, but how far they were willing to go to try. The nights that followed the first real exchange were filled with anticipation and quiet tension. Scientists stayed alert around the clock, tracking the signals and analyzing the bursts of emotional resonance. Governments were weighing their options, debating the risks of further engagement, while the world at large waited, watching the skies and the news, imagining what lay beyond the reaches of the solar system. Then, almost without warning, the first unmistakable sign of presence appeared. Astronomers at multiple observatories around the globe detected a faint but unusual movement entering the solar system. It was small, irregular, and unlike any asteroid or known comet. At first, they thought it could be a stray satellite, or perhaps space debris drifting from Earth or other nearby planets. But when the object changed course subtly, as though guided by intention, it became clear that this was something different. The object was detected on multiple frequencies, and it slowly grew larger in the tracking images. It wasn't moving like natural space objects. Its motion was deliberate, almost cautious, as if it were aware of detection, but didn't intend harm. Scientists and engineers hurried to confirm the readings. Every check reinforced the same conclusion. It was a craft of some kind, but unlike any humanity had built. In the early hours of one quiet morning, the craft appeared to approach Earth's orbit. It was small but intact, with a faint glow emanating from within. It didn't carry weapons, shields, or any recognizable markings, only an energy signature that pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. News of the arrival was leaked and hushed. Tones to major media networks, and soon the world was buzzing with cautious speculation. Governments prepared secure sites for possible contact. Scientists equipped communication devices, attempting to translate any incoming signals in real time. Security teams were stationed at remote locations, monitoring the craft's descent. But throughout all this, the prevailing feeling among the world's population was not fear, but curiosity mixed with hope. The craft landed softly in a remote desert area far from human habitation. There was no crash, no explosive entry, only a quiet settling that seemed almost gentle. A small perimeter was established by international teams, combining both scientists and carefully trained security personnel. Everyone knew the moment would define the first true interaction with an intelligent, extraterrestrial species. When the first team cautiously approached the craft, they were stunned. Inside were three beings, fragile and delicate, their forms almost translucent under the soft glow of the craft's interior. They appeared weak, their movements hesitant and slow. Though they were alive, they clearly struggled to maintain their balance, and their breathing patterns were uneven, shallow, and labored. The first instinct among the humans was to help. Gloves, masks, and protective suits were prepared, and the beings were offered water, warmth, and careful attention. Communication was attempted using light pulses first, guided by previous translations of the emotional signals. Slowly, the alien beings began to respond, their bodies moving in slight, deliberate gestures, their lights pulsing with changes in brightness and color that suggested acknowledgement and curiosity. As communication progressed, the scientists realized that the aliens' physiology was far more delicate than expected. Exposure to Earth's atmosphere for more than brief moments could harm them. Even standing outside the craft for a few minutes caused visible strain. Yet through screens and light signals, they began to tell their story. Their homeworld had been stable once, with oceans that shimmered in the faint light of their star, and air that supported their fragile forms. But a slow, unstoppable change had occurred. The atmosphere thinned year by year, their water sources diminished, and the delicate balance of their ecosystem collapsed. The species had tried to adapt, but their bodies were simply not designed for the new conditions. Their technology, advanced yet fragile, had begun to fail, and the situation was beyond repair. Through patient communication, the humans began to understand that these beings were refugees, not explorers, not invaders. They came with hope, but mostly with fear. The signals of distress humanity had received were accurate. These beings had nowhere else to turn. The scientists and engineers present worked tirelessly to devise solutions. They examined the craft, studying its systems, the life support mechanisms, and the faint energy pulses that sustained the aliens. Even though Earth's environment was harsh for them, humans realized that their species' resilience in extreme conditions, storms, high gravity, radiation, and unpredictable weather made them uniquely suited to handle dangerous situations that would be fatal to these fragile beings. Gradually, a relationship formed. The aliens began to trust the humans, responding to light pulses and energy patterns with increasing clarity. Through this interaction, the scientists learned more about the aliens' culture, their way of thinking, and the challenges they faced on their home planet. Despite their fragile appearance, there was intelligence, ingenuity, and an unspoken dignity in every movement and pulse of light. Meanwhile, humanity watched from afar, both on-site and through global communications. News of the contact spread, careful not to alarm or mislead. Images of the glowing, fragile beings cautiously interacting with humans captured the imagination of millions. People across the world were drawn into a story of empathy, courage, and unprecedented responsibility. For the scientists, the days blurred into nights as they worked with these newcomers. Communication improved steadily. Patterns of light were translated into more complex meanings, sometimes using mathematical symbols, other times using frequency modulations that carried emotional tones. The aliens began to describe their world with greater detail, The thinning layers of atmosphere, the failing water systems, the delicate cities built to accommodate their fragile bodies, and the small underground shelters where the last survivors had gathered. Every detail added to the urgency. It became clear that time was not on anyone's side. The aliens' survival depended on a level of intervention that humans had never attempted before. A combination of environmental engineering, life support adaptation, and careful coordination. That could not be rushed. Despite the challenges, the team recognized that humans were uniquely positioned to help. Earth's inhabitants had survived extreme conditions, modified environments for agriculture and habitation, and built technology to withstand harsh climates. This resilience became the foundation for hope. Over time, trust deepened. The aliens responded with patterns that conveyed gratitude, relief, and cautious optimism. They began to share more of their knowledge, including advanced energy systems, structural designs, and methods to stabilize fragile environments. While humans were careful to protect themselves and avoid overexposure, the collaboration blossomed into a partnership defined by respect and necessity. As contact continued, global networks coordinated resources, sending engineers, scientists, and survival experts to the remote site. Earth's leaders observed closely, providing support while ensuring safety and stability. International cooperation reached levels previously thought impossible, motivated by the urgent need to assist a species that had called out in desperation. Through careful observation and patient interaction, humans learned that the aliens' hope was fragile but real. They had never left their planet extensively, their fragile physiology making space travel nearly impossible without support. Yet somehow, guided by the signals sent across light years, they had reached Earth's vicinity, trusting in the strength of the species they had named Deathworlders. Every day brought new insights, new challenges, and new emotional exchanges. Humans learned to interpret subtle light shifts, tiny pulses, and even shifts in color as communication. The aliens, in turn, began to understand human determination, resilience, and willingness to act under difficult circumstances. A bond formed, unspoken yet undeniable, rooted in trust and shared purpose. As the world watched, the craft remained. In the desert, a symbol of fragile hope and human responsibility. For those at the research station and those coordinating from afar, the task was no longer about signals or numbers. It was about life, survival, and the delicate trust between species separated by unimaginable distances. The arrival of the craft changed everything. It was proof that the universe held other forms of life, yes, but more importantly, it proved that compassion and courage could extend across light years. Humanity had the opportunity not only to witness, but to act, to shape a future where empathy mattered as much as intelligence or technology. And while the aliens could not yet step freely into Earth's environment, their presence was enough to transform human understanding. They were not invaders, not threats, not mysteries to fear. They were beings in need, and humans had been chosen to respond. That quiet desert site became a place of wonder and responsibility, where humans learned that survival was not just about adapting to the world they knew, but also about reaching across the universe to help those who could not survive on their own. Each day, new steps were taken. Careful experiments, protective suits, light-based communication, and shared knowledge. Each day brought the fragile creatures closer to understanding that help was real, that trust could be placed in beings who had survived harsh storms, intense cold, heat, and countless dangers. In those early weeks, humanity learned the lesson that no technology or strategy could teach, that the most important element in survival is empathy, and that courage is not only about facing threats, but also about offering safety to the vulnerable. The aliens, observing human behavior and determination, began to show signs of hope. They pulsed more brightly, responded more clearly, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to relax. The world waited and watched, but those on site understood the truth of the moment. History was not being made with battles or victories, but with quiet patience, careful observation, and acts of care that crossed the boundary between worlds. And as humans continued to assist the fragile visitors, the bond grew stronger, forming the foundation for the even greater challenges that lay ahead. After the initial contact and careful interactions in the desert, the world began preparing for something far greater. The first task was simple but monumental: understanding how humans could help a species so fragile in a way that wouldn't harm either them or Earth's environment. Scientists, engineers, and experts in survival across harsh terrains were called together to form a new international team. This team would be tasked with studying the alien species, devising solutions, and eventually traveling beyond Earth if necessary. The aliens themselves were cautious. Every movement was calculated, every light pulse a test of trust. Their physiology, delicate and untested in conditions beyond their homeworld, limited the amount of time they could spend in Earth's air without assistance. Yet in their fragility, there was intelligence and urgency. They had survived as long as possible underground, communicating their plight across the stars. And now they had reached beings capable of survival in conditions that had long since defeated their species. Human experts began detailed studies. They observed the alien physiology, noting how exposure to Earth's environment caused visible strain. Small changes in atmospheric pressure, temperature, and gravity had immediate effects. The team realized that helping them directly on Earth would be a challenge. Specialized suits, filtered air, and carefully monitored environments were needed to allow even short periods outside the craft. Meanwhile, the aliens shared their knowledge. They displayed sequences of light and shapes representing their technology, environmental control systems, and energy sources. While these systems were fragile and unsuited for harsh conditions, they gave humans a glimpse into how an advanced species had survived for millennia on a delicate planet. Engineers took meticulous notes, considering how some concepts could be adapted for human use in assisting their fragile friends. The concept of the Deathworlders became central. Humans understood that their strength lay in surviving extreme conditions: storms, heat, cold, high gravity, and natural disasters. This unique adaptability made them the only species the aliens had observed capable of performing tasks necessary to stabilize their world. The term, once strange and foreign, became a rallying point for the international team. Plans began to form for direct intervention. While Earth's atmosphere could not sustain the aliens for long, human teams could operate under extreme conditions for extended periods. This meant humans could enter the dying world, deploy technology, and physically stabilize environments where the alien species could not survive alone. The project was delicate, dangerous, and unprecedented, but it was the only path forward. The world watched in awe as news of the mission spread. While the details remained classified for safety, it was clear that humanity was preparing to travel beyond its home planet to aid another civilization. The very idea seemed impossible a year ago, yet now, through a combination of resilience, determination, and empathy, it was becoming reality. The first training sessions for the human volunteers began. Engineers, biologists, survival experts, and specialists in extreme environments were carefully chosen. They practiced in simulated conditions: high-pressure chambers, low-oxygen environments, extreme heat and cold, and confined spaces. Each team member was trained to operate the fragile equipment necessary to stabilize alien habitats, as well as to assist beings who could not endure even slight environmental variations. The aliens, observing this preparation, reacted with a mixture of awe and cautious hope. Their delicate forms pulsed with subtle light changes whenever humans approached or demonstrated care. They seemed to understand, in a way humans had never imagined, that the species capable of surviving extreme hardships was preparing to act on their behalf. Logistics became a critical focus. Supplies, energy systems, environmental stabilizers, and communication devices were carefully designed and tested. Every tool was engineered to be robust enough for human operation, but sensitive enough to avoid overwhelming the aliens' delicate systems. The project involved unprecedented international cooperation, pooling resources, knowledge, and expertise from every corner of Earth. While the mission's technical aspects were complex, the human element remained central. The volunteers were briefed on the emotional stakes. They were entering a world where every action mattered, where mistakes could mean life or death for beings who had reached out for help. Trust, patience, and careful observation became as important as technical skill. The launch was scheduled with precise timing. Atmospheric conditions on Earth had to be optimal, equipment fully tested, and communications synchronized with orbital satellites. The day arrived quietly, with small ceremonies at multiple launch sites, recognizing the courage and dedication of those who would travel to the distant, fragile world. As the human team departed Earth, leaving behind friends, families, and a planet watching with anticipation, the aliens observed with wonder. Their species had sent signals across vast distances, hoping someone would hear. Now, the very beings they had admired, feared, and trusted were physically approaching to help them survive. It was a moment of quiet triumph, fragile yet profound. As beings separated by light years and physical vulnerabilities prepared to work together, upon arrival in the alien system, humans saw firsthand the magnitude of the devastation. Cities built to support delicate life forms were crumbling. Air layers were thin, unstable, and dangerous. Oceans had receded, leaving cracked terrain where water once shimmered. The alien population, already small, had gathered in underground shelters to avoid the unstable surface conditions. Despite the danger, human engineers and specialists began deploying stabilizing technology. Atmospheric regulators, thermal shields, water reclamation systems, and energy redistributors were placed strategically to protect the environment and allow the alien species to survive outside their shelters. The work was exhausting, physically, demanding, and required careful coordination to avoid mistakes that could be catastrophic. The aliens, unable to move freely in their environment, observed the humans from within protective bubbles and shelters. They watched as humans braved conditions that would be fatal to their kind, adjusting devices, monitoring sensors, and carefully managing energy and environmental flows. Each successful step brought a pulse of light and color from the aliens, subtle but unmistakable signs of hope and gratitude. Through these efforts, humans slowly began to stabilize the most critical areas. Small streams returned to life, thin clouds formed in the atmosphere, and localized zones became safe for the aliens to survive, even if briefly. Every achievement was a triumph of collaboration, ingenuity, and determination. The aliens' faith in humans grew, their pulses becoming steadier, brighter, and more confident. In parallel, humans and aliens exchanged knowledge. The aliens showed designs and methods that were impossible to implement with their own physiology, but could be adapted for human use. Humans shared Earth-based technology, adjusted for fragile conditions, creating hybrid systems that leveraged the strengths of both species. Each day brought new insights and refinements, demonstrating that survival required both physical resilience and intellectual collaboration. The emotional bond deepened as well. The aliens' gratitude was subtle but constant. Light pulses shifted in patterns that suggested joy, relief, and cautious optimism. Humans, in turn, felt a profound sense of purpose and responsibility, knowing that the fate of an entire species rested in their hands. The connection went beyond words or gestures. It was an understanding born from shared stakes and the recognition of strength across different forms of life. As the work progressed, the aliens' trust allowed for limited surface exploration. Carefully controlled environments were established, enabling some of the fragile beings to step outside their shelters for short periods. They observed the humans' careful work, learned from their actions, and gradually became participants in their own survival, guided by humans who understood both the environment and the emotional needs of the species. Communication continued through the familiar patterns of light and pulses, enriched by the shared experiences on the planet. Humans and aliens developed a nuanced language of signals, combining technical instructions with emotional resonance. Every pulse conveyed information, reassurance, or encouragement. The bond grew stronger, demonstrating that understanding could transcend physical differences. The world on Earth followed developments with fascination and hope. Images, descriptions, and limited live updates brought humanity closer to the alien species than ever before. People were inspired not by conquest or exploration, but by acts of care, courage, and collaboration that spanned the cosmos. The project became a symbol of what humanity could achieve when strength, empathy, and intelligence were combined. The initial phase of the mission concluded successfully. Humans had demonstrated that their adaptability, resilience, and ingenuity were effective in stabilizing critical zones, protecting the alien species, and preparing for more comprehensive intervention. The aliens, once on the brink of extinction, began to show signs of recovery, their pulses steadier, their movements less strained, and their light patterns more expressive of hope than fear. Though challenges remained, one truth had become undeniable. Humans were uniquely suited to perform the dangerous, demanding tasks required to save another species. The term Deathworlders, once merely a descriptor, had become a recognition of human capability, courage, and willingness to act in the face of extreme difficulty. In the quiet moments, away from sensors and cameras, humans and aliens shared mutual respect. The fragile beings had called across the stars, hoping someone would hear. Humanity had answered, and through patient observation, careful intervention, and shared effort, they had begun to turn desperation into possibility, fear into hope, and isolation into connection. As the days passed on the alien world, humans continued their careful work to stabilize the environment. Each step was challenging. Every action had to be precise, and every mistake could have catastrophic consequences. But the team had learned the rhythm of the planet, the pulse of the fragile beings, and the delicate balance required for survival. The first priority was water. The receded oceans had left cracked, dry terrain in many regions. Human engineers deployed water reclamation units, drawing moisture from underground reservoirs and redistributing it to key areas. The systems were robust enough to handle Earth-level environmental variation, yet careful calibration was required to ensure the aliens' exposure remained safe. Even a minor fluctuation in humidity could overwhelm their delicate physiology. Next came the atmosphere. Sensors were placed in strategic locations to measure air pressure, oxygen levels, and trace elements essential for the alien survival. Humans adjusted regulators and filters to stabilize microenvironments. Some regions became safe enough for the aliens to venture outside their shelters, although for very limited periods. Every step was monitored closely, with humans moving carefully, to avoid sudden changes in temperature or pressure that could harm the species they had come to protect. While the physical work was demanding, the emotional element was equally important. The aliens communicated constantly through light pulses, subtle shifts in color and rhythm that conveyed hope, fear, and reassurance. Scientists translated these messages with growing accuracy. Humans learned that a steady pulse meant calm, a rapid flicker indicated alarm, and variations in hue could signify curiosity, joy, or trust. Interpreting these signals became an essential part of the mission, shaping decisions about where to deploy technology and how to approach the fragile beings. The aliens' behavior gradually changed. Once timid and hesitant, they began to move within their shelters with more confidence. They responded to human gestures and instructions, learning the rhythms of the protective equipment, the stabilizing technology, and the carefully monitored environment. Though they could not yet survive unassisted on the planet's surface, they began participating in their own rescue, guided by the humans who had arrived across the stars to help. Human engineers and biologists collaborated closely to adapt technology for the alien physiology. Filters were adjusted to remove elements toxic to their species. Energy regulators were tuned for their delicate sensory systems, and small monitoring devices were designed to track health without causing stress. Each adaptation was tested thoroughly before deployment, and the team learned to anticipate the alien reactions, adjusting systems in real time. Meanwhile, global coordination continued from Earth. Satellites relayed live data from the alien world, providing real-time monitoring of environmental conditions and human interventions. International teams advised on technology deployment, environmental stabilization, and risk mitigation. Humanity watched with fascination and hope, following updates with the knowledge that an entire species' survival rested in the hands of those on the ground. As the human team worked, they discovered more about the alien culture. The beings communicated memories through sequences of light pulses, sharing stories of their homeworld, their cities, their oceans, and the natural beauty that had once thrived. Though the humans could not fully comprehend the details, they understood the emotional weight, the sense of loss, and the fragile hope that remained. Each shared story reinforced the urgency of the mission and deepened the bond between species. The project required more than technical skill. It demanded patience, empathy, and careful observation. The aliens' trust was earned gradually, one successful intervention at a time. Every system that functioned without harm, every movement that protected life, every moment of understanding built a foundation of mutual respect. Humans learned to read not only the technological data, but the emotional responses, adjusting their actions to ensure the fragile beings remained calm and safe. Water distribution systems gradually restored small streams, feeding shallow ponds that reflected the soft light of their star. Atmospheric stabilizers created pockets of breathable air where the aliens could step outside briefly without immediate risk. Thermal shields moderated temperature extremes, preventing sudden heat or cold that could overwhelm their systems. Humans worked tirelessly, often for hours without rest, to maintain the delicate balance required for survival. During these efforts, the aliens began showing subtle signs of recovery. Light pulses became steadier, colors shifted to warmer tones, and slight movements indicated growing confidence. Though they could not yet leave the safety of shelters, their awareness and participation in the rescue increased. Observing the humans' careful work, they learned to anticipate environmental changes, contributing to their own survival through guidance and feedback. The partnership between species deepened further. Humans taught the aliens to operate certain stabilizing devices indirectly, using simple gestures and signals. In turn, the aliens shared insights about their planet's ecosystems, energy flow, and structural design, which helped humans optimize interventions. This exchange of knowledge, driven by necessity and trust, created a unique collaboration across the stars. As weeks passed, the once fragile world began to show small signs of revival. Streams glistened, thin clouds formed, and small patches of vegetation re-emerged. Though the planet was far from fully restored, these signs were monumental for the surviving alien population. Each improvement brought subtle changes in behavior. Light pulses grew brighter, movements became more assured, and patterns of interaction with humans became more complex and engaged. The emotional impact on the human team was profound. They had traveled across the cosmos, guided by hope and resilience, to intervene in a world that had suffered unimaginable loss. Every successful stabilization, every moment of alien participation, reinforced the sense of purpose and responsibility. They realized that survival was not merely a matter of technology or skill, but of empathy, trust, and careful attention to the needs of those they were helping. Global observers followed each update with fascination. People were inspired not by conquest or adventure, but by acts of care, courage, and collaboration. The project became a symbol of human potential, demonstrating that adaptability, determination, and compassion could extend beyond Earth, reaching beings who had once seemed out of reach. Throughout the mission, the aliens continued to respond to human guidance. Small groups ventured outside shelters under supervision, interacting cautiously with the stabilized environments. Each successful excursion reinforced the bond between species, and the humans learned to interpret new patterns of light, indicating curiosity, joy, and even playfulness. These moments, though brief, brought a sense of normalcy and hope to a world that had been on the brink of collapse. Challenges persisted. Sudden shifts in atmospheric pressure, temperature spikes, and mechanical failures required constant vigilance. But the humans, trained and experienced in harsh conditions, adapted quickly, finding solutions that protected both themselves and the fragile alien population. Every day was a balance between risk and reward, careful intervention and observation. As the mission progressed, a sense of shared accomplishment emerged. Humans had proven capable of intervening in extreme conditions to assist another species, and the aliens had begun to regain a measure of autonomy, participating in their own survival. This partnership, built on trust and mutual understanding, became the foundation for long-term recovery efforts. The success of the initial stabilization phase allowed for more ambitious plans. Larger areas could be addressed, more water and energy. Systems deployed and environmental conditions gradually improved. Humans and aliens continued to work together, refining techniques, exchanging knowledge, and celebrating small victories. Each day brought progress, reinforcing the idea that hope and careful effort could overcome even the most extreme challenges. In quiet moments, humans observed the alien species in their partially restored environment. The once timid beings moved with increasing confidence, their light pulses reflecting emotions of curiosity, trust, and cautious joy. Though their world was far from fully healed, the signs of recovery were undeniable, and the bond between species had never been stronger. Through patience, empathy, and collaboration, humans had not only stabilized critical areas, but had also fostered a sense of hope. The aliens, once isolated and fearful, began to experience the possibility of survival and renewal. And for the human team, the mission reaffirmed a profound truth, that compassion, courage, and the willingness to act across differences could make a difference. Even across the vastness of space, the final stage of the mission had arrived, and with it came both hope and heightened responsibility. The humans and aliens had worked together for weeks, stabilizing environments, repairing critical systems, and learning to communicate through pulses of light and subtle changes in rhythm and color. Now, the task was to expand these efforts, restoring larger areas of the alien world and preparing for a more permanent recovery. The human teams moved with careful precision. Each step was planned, each intervention calculated to avoid harm. Specialized suits maintained temperature, pressure, and oxygen levels to allow humans to operate safely in extreme conditions while protecting the fragile alien physiology. Equipment was upgraded to monitor environmental shifts in real time, ensuring immediate response to unexpected changes. The stakes were high. One miscalculation could undo weeks of progress and put lives at risk. Water systems were the first priority. Reservoirs were reinforced, small artificial streams redirected, and evaporation controls implemented to conserve every drop. The aliens, still limited in mobility, guided humans using light sequences, indicating which areas were critical, which regions had historical significance, and which zones contained fragile ecosystems. Humans followed these cues meticulously, moving with patience, respect, and care. Atmospheric stabilization followed. New filters and regulators were deployed, balancing oxygen and trace gases essential for alien survival. Energy redistribution systems were expanded to reach distant regions, and thermal shields were enhanced to protect against both heat and sudden cold. Every action was a lesson in adaptation and collaboration, combining human ingenuity with alien knowledge and guidance. As humans worked, they learned to interpret subtleties in the aliens' light-based language more deeply. Gradations of brightness, shifts in color, and slight variations in rhythm conveyed complex emotional and informational content. Humans began anticipating responses, adjusting their actions to reinforce trust and encourage cooperation. The bond between species became stronger, grounded in understanding, empathy, and shared purpose. The aliens, once reserved and fearful, began to venture outside protective zones under supervision. Their movements were cautious at first, but each successful excursion built confidence. Light pulses brightened with every step, signaling curiosity, joy, and increasing trust. For the human teams, these moments were deeply rewarding, a clear sign that the delicate species was regaining autonomy and hope. Every day presented new challenges. Sudden atmospheric shifts, unexpected equipment malfunctions, and unstable terrain required human ingenuity and rapid problem-solving. Yet each obstacle reinforced the importance of careful observation, collaboration, and patience. Humans had become adept at reading environmental cues, interpreting alien signals, and implementing solutions that protected life and restored stability. The recovery of key regions began to have visible effects. Streams and small ponds glimmered under the alien sun. Vegetation slowly returned, and local atmospheric conditions improved enough for extended excursions. The aliens explored cautiously, returning to report observations through coordinated light sequences. These reports helped humans refine interventions, ensuring that restoration efforts remained aligned with both environmental and physiological needs. Collaboration deepened further. Humans taught the aliens to manipulate certain stabilizing devices indirectly, using gestures and sequences they could manage without risking exposure. The aliens, in turn, shared insights into planetary systems, energy distribution, and environmental management techniques that were impossible for them to execute alone. Each exchange strengthened understanding, creating a partnership based on respect, knowledge, and mutual reliance. Global observers continued to monitor progress. Satellites relayed data, video streams shared glimpses of human-alien cooperation, and news networks highlighted the extraordinary achievement. People worldwide were inspired by the demonstration of empathy, courage, and skill that crossed species and worlds. The mission became a symbol of hope, demonstrating humanity's capacity for care and action in the face of unprecedented challenges. As the project expanded to larger areas, humans implemented more advanced systems. Atmospheric stabilizers covered extended zones. Water distribution networks reached deeper into previously dry terrain, and energy systems supported broader regions. The fragile species began participating more actively, their movements coordinated with human guidance. Light sequences became increasingly complex, expressing not only immediate needs, but suggestions, preferences, and appreciation. Through continuous observation, humans noticed subtle behavioral changes. The aliens showed signs of renewed curiosity, exploring small areas with cautious excitement. Their pulses of light reflected more confidence, brighter colors, and patterns indicative of engagement and learning. These behaviors indicated that survival was no longer solely dependent on human intervention. The aliens were regaining agency and adaptability, emotional bonds strengthened in parallel with physical recovery. Humans experienced a profound sense of purpose, witnessing the transformation of a once fragile civilization. They understood that their presence and careful actions had given life and hope to a species on the brink of extinction. The aliens, in turn, responded with trust, recognition, and subtle expressions of gratitude, forming a mutual understanding that transcended words and species. With stabilization achieved across critical regions, the mission turned toward long-term sustainability. Humans deployed permanent systems to regulate air composition, water flow, and energy distribution. Adaptive shelters were established, allowing the aliens to inhabit previously uninhabitable areas safely. Knowledge transfer became a priority, with humans teaching techniques for environmental maintenance while continuing to monitor progress remotely. The aliens began contributing actively to ongoing recovery. While still limited by physiological fragility, they participated in maintenance tasks guided by human expertise. Their involvement provided crucial insights into planetary systems, allowing for refinements that accelerated restoration and enhanced safety. Together, humans and aliens created a resilient framework capable of sustaining life under previously impossible conditions. As weeks passed, signs of transformation were unmistakable. Streams flowed steadily, vegetation covered previously barren regions, and atmospheric conditions improved. The aliens' movements became more confident, their pulses of light conveying curiosity, playfulness, and engagement. Even limited exploration beyond protective zones was possible, demonstrating tangible recovery and hope for a species once confined to shelters and fragility. A human team recognized a profound truth. Survival required more than technology or skill. It demanded empathy, patience, and trust. Humans had bridged vast physical and emotional distances, bringing life and hope to a civilization that had believed extinction inevitable. The bond forged across light years exemplified the power of understanding, collaboration, and shared purpose. Global audiences followed developments with fascination and hope. News updates highlighted milestones in recovery, demonstrating human ingenuity and compassion. People were inspired not by conquest or exploration alone, but by acts of care that saved lives and restored dignity. The project became a model for international cooperation and ethical responsibility, transcending national and cultural boundaries. In the final phases, humans and aliens worked in harmony. Environmental systems were maintained, safety protocols refined, and knowledge transfer continued. The once fragile species moved more freely, exploring their world under carefully managed conditions. Light pulses conveyed joy, curiosity, and gratitude, expressing a renewed sense of agency and trust. The culmination of the mission was not a single event but a series of small victories. Critical areas stabilized, species participation increased, and environmental conditions reached sustainable levels. Humans had demonstrated that their resilience, adaptability, and empathy could extend beyond Earth, protecting life and fostering recovery across worlds. As humans prepared to depart, a quiet ceremony took place. The aliens, fragile yet vibrant, communicated their appreciation through a complex sequence of light pulses, expressing trust, hope, and acknowledgement of human courage. The human team responded with gestures and signals, conveying respect, pride, and shared accomplishment. The mission's success was clear. A civilization on the brink had been given the tools, guidance, and confidence to survive. Humans had not only provided technical support, but had also nurtured trust, understanding, and hope. The bond established across species and distance would endure, serving as a testament to what could be achieved when strength, empathy, and determination were combined. As the human teams returned to Earth, they carried more than data and experience. They carried stories of fragile life saved, of trust earned, and of hope restored. The world witnessed the transformative power of collaboration, courage, and compassion, understanding that survival is not merely an individual endeavor, but a shared responsibility.